Hi, I'm Shelli, and we are back with Season 4, Episode 1 with Scott. Can you tell me about the progress that you've been making this summer?
Right, well, here at the ReBuild shop, we've been working on some wing ribs, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly go over the project in general and then come back to where we are now. So overall, this is the project to rebuild the Halifax from a donor aircraft. There were some parts missing. The parts we're working on are the main spar, rear spar, and ribs of the Halifax Bomber. So it's basically a great big box section, okay, with a spar at the front, spar at the back, and then joined with all these ribs. The donor aircraft was short by 4 ribs. So we've had to build these ribs from scratch. And it's basically made of, each rib is made out of a 30 thou aluminum, with some other parts that we've had to get fabricated here at a local shop called Precise Metafab. And the folks over there have been really good about building these parts for us. And these are basically as per the Handley page specifications, plus or minus. So I'm just going to go over here for a second. So here's one of the parts that we had built, and this is basically a stiffener. And now this rib is in the process of being built, and if you look at it, it's quite flimsy. The sheet itself is quite flimsy.
That's because of the aluminum that we're using, yeah.
It's just aluminum sheet. But then when you rivet the stiffener on the sheet, it's much more rigid, right? So this is what gives the rib its structural strength, right? Without these stiffeners, it would just be wobbly, right?
So do you have to use the same number of stiffeners for each rib, or does it depend on the rib that you're using?
Yeah, basically we're following the Handley page drawings, and it's predetermined more or less from the drawings. They've already done the engineering. They know how many ribs or stiffeners have to be in place, so we're just following those plans. So in terms of having to re-engineer something, we really don't need to. We're doing some minor calculations just to make sure that everything's copacetic. But basically, the good thing is that this aircraft is never going to take the same war load that the real Handley page ever took. I mean, this aircraft is never going to fly. So in terms of safety factor, we're fortunate in that we've got a tenth of the loading, right, that the real Halifax would have had to deal with. So where at the end, the amount of engineering actually going into this is fairly nominal, really, which is great. So these ribs here, these two, there's a completed one here behind you, Shelli. So this is the completed rib, and this one is in process. This is about 60% done. And these 2 ribs are a pair. There'll be one on each side of the fuselage.
So these two are the same?
Yeah, they're mirror images of what they are, of each other, really. They're a matching pair, if you will. But then there's 2 more that we're going to be building, and they're the ones that are up against the fuselage here. And they have to be exact copies of the Halifax rib, because they're where what we call the crew position or the crew seating would have been. So there's actually a bench seat on either side of the fuselage, and that's where the crew would have gone in a crash scenario. So if they were on fire or if they were descending, and they would be told to go to their crash positions, which would have been sitting on these benches along these ribs. And so I want to make sure that those are exact copies of the original Halifax design, because indeed we want to make sure that any visible parts, particularly those that might be inside, are true to the original, right? So we're kind of transitioning between the donor aircraft ribs to a Halifax rib. They're going to be a little more complex. There's going to be more ribs. We do have the Handley page drawings again, which is great. We can just use those drawings. The engineering's been done, so we're good to go. And so we're very fortunate to have the original drawings. We're fortunate to have a local company that can fabricate these parts for us, because without that, we couldn't do it in this shop. So we've got pretty well everything we need. We're using rivet technology that would have been used in the day. So I think it's a pretty accurate copy, and no, I'm very pleased. This was a bit of we didn't know what to expect before we get into this new build, and I'm very, very happy with how it's turned out. And I feel confident now moving forward. We can do more complex structures as we move forward, and I'm very, very pleased with how it's turned out.
So how long does it take the manufacturing place to actually make the stabilizers and the stiffeners, as opposed to how long it actually took you to make the rib itself?
Yeah, the turnaround time from Precise Metafab was brilliant. They basically did the parts in about a week, and luckily we weren't in a rush, so there was no, I ordered them quite a while ago, so we had them here ready to go. So no, excellent turnaround from those guys, and I'm eager to take more work to them. We have more parts that have to be fabricated of more complex design and shape as well, so it'll be challenging for them as well.
So you're saying that this is the finished model of one of the ribs, and this is the mirror of the rib, that corresponding rib. What do you need to do to this one to make it into this one right now?
There's another set of ribs, or stiffeners that have to go here. Pardon me. And then there's some other little small stiffeners here that have to go on this rib here, back here. And then there's some angled aluminum that has to be fixed on the front, riveted on the front here, and then this one will be done as well. And there's some corner stiffening that has to go in as well. But this one is, as I say, pretty well about 60%, 70% complete.
So can you show me on the model exactly what we're looking at right here in real life?
Absolutely, Shelley. A few months ago, I built up this model, and basically it shows the structure kind of exposed, if you want to call it that. So what we're working on is these ribs here. Okay, so this will give you an idea of where they go in relation to the wing. Now the fuselage would pass over top of the wing structure here, right? So these are the components that we're building currently.
So tell me about the next step in the process.
We're going to turn our attention to the rear spar. So we've done the front spar previously, and if you check out the other shows, you'll know that we've got that work more or less complete. We're working on the ribs now. The next step will be the rear spar. And it's complicated in that there are what are called rear spar booms that need to be fabricated. They're 15 feet long, and it's basically like a T-section of material that's about, say, 4 inches by 6 inches. And those parts have to be tapered along the 15 feet. So it's quite a complex machining process. So we're going to be getting these booms in a long blank that's going to be extruded out of a machine. And then we have to take them to a machine shop and have them machine these pieces down so that they taper along their length. And then those booms are joined by aluminum plate, basically. And so we'll have to do a similar process to what we did with the main spar. We'll have to build a big jig. We'll have to, once all these parts are machined, locate them, drill them, rivet them together, and get the rear spar complete. So we've got the we've got the main spar done, we've got the ribs done, or we will have the ribs done, then the rear spar done, and then we can start to bolt everything back together again, and it'll start to look like a wing again. And I can't wait until we start to put skin on this thing and it starts to look like a wing again, because now it just looks like a collection of parts, a bit of a basket case. So I'm really eager to move it forward and start to reskin. That's still quite a ways away, mind you, but really looking forward to that.
So what's your estimated time of completion for the ribs at this point?
Well, a lot of that depends on the folks out there. We are in dire need of support and for material, for tools, for help us out in terms of labor. This machining, for example, is going to cost us some money. These extrusions are going to cost us some money. So, a lot of it's dependent upon the people out there and the support we get. This is a multi-year project. It's going to cost us probably millions when it's all said and done. And we really need the support out there. Hopefully we can get the ribs done, say, in the next 3 months, and then the rear spar hopefully in, say, 5 to 6 months, I hope. And then hopefully we'd be reskinning within a year, I hope. Now, again, if things could pick up, find a few more volunteers, get some funding, and we could maybe accelerate that.
So do you have any short-term goals for finances that you're looking at right now, or is it more along the lines of just we sort of are going a little bit more of a piecemeal fashion?
Right. I'd have to check with Carl Casgard of Halifax 57 Rescue, but you know, I think we are in need of 10 to 20K just for the rear spar components that we need to have extruded and machined. So that's just in the near future, right? Longer term, when we get into fuselage parts and whatnot, there's a lot more money in terms of tooling and material. But in the immediate, I would say we need at least 10K to keep us going.